Good evening, Layton. So, talk to me about the choices that people have. Let's start with diesel, because diesel is a bit of an experiment, because there's a deregulation of diesel, so you can kind of shop around now. How's that working? Do you know?
I mean, obviously, a lot of people have diesel cars, and it's it's a very big fuel in things like the agricultural sector. So you will find in smaller places people will shop around, and they will go look for the fuel that is cheapest and most convenient for them. So you may find, it's not necessarily the cheapest fuel, but it may be the most convenient for the person to actually go buy it at a specific place. So, I mean, in terms of the deregulation of diesel, you can sell it for more or less than what the wholesale price is. So, people are going to shop around, and that's exactly what you see.
Also, we're seeing the notes today with government considering what future measures. They're talking about removing the price cap on 93 octane, and they talk about a partial deregulation. It's something they're planning. Is the AA in support of this? How easy is it to make it happen?
Look, I don't think it's going to be difficult to make it happen from a regulatory point of view, Sally. I think, obviously, if government wants it to happen, they can make it happen. Are we in favor of it as the AA? I think there's two issues to that. First of all, anything that is going to benefit consumers at the end of the day is something that we would naturally, be in support of. But at the same time, we wouldn't want to see anything that is going to damage the industry or lead to any job losses, which is what's, many people who are in the industry are concerned about in terms of the deregulation of 93. So I think it needs to be something that is really clearly thought out. What I think we are encouraged by is that government is finally acknowledging that there is a huge problem and that there are sustainable issues that need to be found to deal with these problems. For us, it's a conversation that needs to have been had a long time ago. But the review of the fuel price, which the AA has been calling for, is now something we think needs to happen as a matter of urgency.
Talk to me about the choices that consumers have currently, people who use petrol. We know that as of midnight, 95 octane is around 24 Rand 17, which is a historic high. 93 is going to cost a bit less, 23 Rand 93 per litre. The temptation is, even if you normally use 95, is to swap down to 93. Is that a wise move?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the individual user and what the manufacturer's recommendation is in terms of that vehicle. And, it's going to have to happen on a case-by-case basis. But, Sally, I think the issue is a lot broader than just what people are putting into their vehicles at the moment. Yes, we're seeing a lot of people are queuing because they want to save a few rands at the station tonight. If you're putting in 100 litres, you're going to be saving in the region of about 25 Rand, come tomorrow. It's not a huge saving. I think the bigger concern for for the AA is what the knock-on effect is going to have, is going to be, and what the impact this is going to have just on consumers in general. We know that this is such a huge input cost, and when fuel prices go up, as they are in all parts of the world, cost of living expenses rise. And so what we are seeing is that is going to happen in South Africa. And I think that for us is the big concern. Yes, it's an issue about individual motorists, and it's certainly going to hit people in their pockets. But the bigger issue is what impact this is going to have on the economy in general, and how is this going to play out in terms of basket of goods and living costs going forward. And that really, I think, is where the concern is at the moment.
It seems there is a big discussion now. Government is fully engaged with what to do. They've extended this tax relief cushion of R1.50 for the month of June. They're halving it for the month of July. And hopefully by August there's some permanent plans in place. What does the AA think could be the best way of bringing our fuel price under control without robbing Peter to pay Paul, trimming from other aspects of the fiscus? And we know how much that money is needed in other areas of our economy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point you're making, because you can't cut the general fuel levy and then just expect that government's going to be happy with losing 90 billion Rand a year. That's never going to happen. And the alternative may be that they look at another funding mechanism, which is really not going to sort the problem out. So we look at the composition of the fuel price. There are things on there that we think need attention. So we have said, look, let's look at the composition of the fuel price line by line. Let's determine whether each of those line items still needs to be there, is still relevant to South Africa, and whether all of those calculations are still correct. That for us is a good starting point, and that needs to happen sooner rather than later. Then we look at things like, for instance, the Road Accident Fund. We have an enormous reliance on the RAF because we have such a poor road safety record in South Africa. That is something in our view that needs a lot more attention. Let's reduce the reliance on the RAF, and we may be able to reduce the reliance on the RAF levy. In the same way, the RAF as an institution, in our view, is poorly managed. It's a poorly run institution. It requires a lot of private sector, civil society intervention. We think that needs to happen. And again, with those types of interventions, we think we could deal better with the RAF levy. That's just one example. We can't be looking at the general fuel levy and saying, let's just scrap it. That is, in our view, going to create a situation which may ultimately bring about further problems down the line. And it's not really going to be sustainable. But Sally, I think the point for us is we need to be having these discussions. Private sector, civil society, all the role players in the industry need to be involved, and government needs to initiate it, and they need to do that yesterday.
And finally, Layton, with consumers staring down at midnight tonight, the highest ever fuel prices we've faced, what's your best advice to motorists and consumers?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think everybody needs to use a vehicle at some point, or everybody's reliant on some form of transport to get around. So it's going to knock a lot of people. I mean, I guess, Sally, and it's sometimes very counterintuitive to say this, but, only use your vehicle if you absolutely need to use your vehicle. Make sure your vehicle's in a good running condition because you're going to use the optimal amount of fuel when you need to use it. Avoid, stop-start traffic, so the traffic jams in the morning and the afternoon. Negotiate with your employer if you can. Carpooling is something that you can consider, obviously, if in discussions with your insurer. But at the end of the day, if this is going to hit your budget, you need to relook at that budget and you need to tighten your belt and cut where you have to. If you're reliant on your vehicle and you have to use it to get to and from work or for emergencies, then that may be your only solution. You may need to cut some things from your budget that you don't want to cut, but unfortunately, that is the reality we're in at the moment. Last point on that, Sally, don't feel alone. People around the world are having the same conversations. They're being asked to give the same types of advice. I know that is of little solace to many people out there who are financially embattled, but this global fuel crisis is exactly that. It is global, and everybody's feeling the pinch at the moment.
Well, they do say misery loves company, so maybe that's a good point that you're ending on. Thank you very much, Layton Beard of the Automobile Association.